It's great to be here. I have to begin with an admission, a confession of sorts. This is my first Basque fry. And so here comes the confession part. I had to do a little research actually on what lamb fries are. And once I figured out what lamb fries are, it reminded me of a question that I got asked on national television. Early in my campaign, one Saturday morning on a national television show, I was asked whether a woman's hormones prevented her from serving in the Oval Office. And my response was, can we think of a single instance in which a man's judgment might have been clouded by his hormones? Including in the Oval Office. You know, before the Fox News debate of last week, by the way, I prefer the term happy hour debate to children's table. Before the happy hour debate, less than 40% of Republican voters had ever heard my name. Because I'm not a celebrity, and I'm not a professional politician. And so I've worked really hard to get to know as many people as I can across this great nation. And I am very honored to be with you this afternoon. I said a couple things on that debate that got some attention. One of the things I said was that Hillary Clinton had lied about Benghazi, about her servers, and about her emails. And I had a bunch of people in the media say, well, that's really strong language. I mean, really? You think she lied? Well, it turns out the majority of Americans think she lied as well. But what I said was, you know what? People are tired of sanitized sound bites and bumper sticker rhetoric. They're tired of politicians not using common sense talk. By any common sense definition, Hillary Clinton lied about Benghazi, about her server, and about her emails. And so then I had a little tussle with Chris Matthews of MSNBC about that later. And hopefully you've learned by now that I will go anywhere and I will answer any question from anyone. One of the questions that I got asked several weeks ago, I went on The View. It's okay, we gotta go where people don't yet know they agree with us. In any event, I was on The View and I quite enjoyed myself, and one of their hosts, Rosie Perez, said to me, we were having a conversation, and you know the tone people get sometimes when they say, why are you a conservative? You know, and that was the tone. She said, you know, Carly, I really like you. I'm not a Republican, she said. I said, wow, Rosie, I'm shocked. I wouldn't have guessed that. She said, I'm not a Republican, but why are you? Why are you a conservative? And here was my answer. I'm a conservative because I know that no one of us is any better than any other one of us. Every one of us has God-given gifts. Every one of us has the capacity to live a life of dignity and purpose and meaning, and I know that our values, our principles, our policies work better to lift everyone up regardless of their circumstances. And the reason I answered that way is because this election is about many things. This election is about beating a Democrat on the other side. Looks like still it'll be Hillary Clinton, but who knows? It's going to be somebody, and we're going to have to beat them. It's about beating a Democrat, but it's actually about more than that. I think it's about reintroducing the United States of America and all of its citizens to what conservatism really means. And I think it's also about educating the American people about who progressives really are and what they believe. So, you know, we were talking about the state of California. My husband Frank and I lived there for 12 years. We left, went back home to Virginia several years ago, and California, as you know, is suffering through a terrible drought. California's had droughts for millennia, as you know. But progressives and liberals and environmentalists decided that despite those constant droughts, that they would prevent the building of a single water conveyance or water storage facility over the last 40 years, even though the population of the state doubled. And when Democrats and Republicans finally got together and said, you know, it's silly. We know we're going to have years when we don't have enough rain, so let's store some of the rain. And instead of letting 70% of it wash out to sea, Washington, D.C. intervened and said, no, 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 we think there's a fish called the smelt. It's endangered. We're going to start controlling your water from Washington, D.C. And so I have seen the devastation in the Central Valley of California, because progressives think we're smarter than others, we're better than others, so we're prepared to sacrifice other people's livelihoods, their lives, their communities at the altar of our ideology. And now this president and this Environmental Protection Agency is rolling out those kinds of regulations all across this great nation. And as of the end of this month, I just came here from the state of Iowa. You know, it's a place where presidential candidates go, like here to Nevada. At the end of this month, the Environmental Protection Agency will control 95% of the water of the state of Iowa. I want to tell you a little story about what I believe this country can be and must be. When I was a little girl, about 8 years old, my mother said to me one Sunday morning, she looked at me the way moms can look at their kids, and she said, what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God. I started out my career as a secretary in a 9-person real estate firm. I typed, I filed, I answered the phones. I had no idea what my future held. And eventually I would go on to become the chief executive of Hewlett-Packard, and we turned it into the largest technology company in the world. And now I am running for the presidency of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, this is only possible in this great nation. And it's possible here because our founders knew what my mother taught me. They knew that everyone has God-given gifts. They knew what I have learned throughout the course of my life in business, in charity, in politics. Everybody has potential. The truth is, most people have far more potential than they realize. Every one of us needs somebody sometimes to take a chance on us. Lord knows I have. Every one of us needs a helping hand sometimes. Lord knows I have when I battled cancer. My family did when we lost our younger daughter, Lori, to the demons of addiction. So I know the power of faith and the strength of family and the comfort of love and friendship and the kindness of strangers. We all need help sometimes, but every single one of us has potential. And so our founders built a nation on an extraordinary idea. And the idea was this, that here in this nation you had a right to fulfill your potential. That's what they meant when they said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they said, and this was the radical part, they said the right to fulfill your potential, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness comes from God and cannot be taken away by man or government. And ladies and gentlemen, I am running for the presidency of the United States because we have come to a pivotal point in our nation's history where the truth is the potential of this nation, the potential, the future of too many Americans' lives is being crushed by the weight, the power, the cost, the corruption, and the ineptitude of the federal government and the political class of Washington, D.C. Whatever your issue, whatever your cause, whatever festering problem you hoped would be resolved by now, the political class has failed you. And if you doubt that, think about what we talk about in every presidential election. We talk about border security. How long have we been talking about that? 25 years. How long has the border been insecure? 25 years. How long has San Francisco been a sanctuary city? Since 1989. There's 300 other sanctuary cities. How long has the legal immigration system been broken? How long has the Veterans Administration been a stain on our nation's honor? 20 years at least. You see, we keep talking about these things, but nothing happens. It reminds me of the difference between management and leadership. You know, managers are people who do the best they can within the status quo. They go along to get along because they've benefited from the status quo. That's not what leadership is. Leaders challenge the status quo. You know, when I was at Hewlett-Packard, I led Hewlett-Packard through a very difficult time. The dot-com bust, post 9/11, the worst technology recession in 25 years. It has taken the NASDAQ, the technology heavy stock index, 15 years to recover to its dot-com boom highs. And in tough times, sometimes you have to make some hard calls. But despite those tough times, we took a company from 44 billion to almost 90 billion. We quadrupled the rate of growth. We tripled the rate of innovation to 11 patents a day. We went from lagging behind in every product category in every market segment to leading in every single one. Some of our strongest competitors literally disappeared because they didn't make the choices necessary to lead and prosper and grow, which is the only way you can create jobs. And guess what? At the end of my 6 years, I got fired. Who is not afraid to say Hillary Clinton lies, who is not afraid to say that it is progressives who have the height of disrespect and disregard for other people's lives and capabilities and livelihoods. But we better also understand what it takes to do the job, because the job needs doing now. I believe we need a president who understands how the economy actually works, who understands that the engine of economic growth in this nation has always been the little 9-person real estate firm, or the family-owned trucking business, or the family-owned auto body shop that my husband Frank of 30 years started out in as a tow truck driver. In other words, it is family-owned businesses, small businesses, community-based businesses that create 2/3 of the new jobs. They employ half the people. So if we are crushing them, and we are, we cannot hope to have this economy rise. We cannot give people opportunities. For the first time in our nation's history, we are now destroying more small businesses than we are creating because we are crushing them with the complexity, the power, the cost, the bureaucracy of the federal government. Big companies do okay. You know, I led a $90 billion business. If I didn't like a 73,000-page tax code, if I didn't like a thicket of regulation, guess what? I could hire accountants and lawyers and lobbyists. But that 9-person real estate firm can't do any of that. And so they just get crushed. We're tangling people's lives up in webs of dependence. We discourage them from moving forward and using their God-given gifts. We encourage them to lay back and become more dependent. That is the height of disrespect and disregard. And we must educate our children by giving every single parent a choice, regardless of their circumstances, so every kid has a chance. The President of the United States, she must understand how the world works and who's in it. And ladies and gentlemen, here's the truth. I know more world leaders on the stage today than anyone running, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton, only I didn't do photo ops. I had meetings. And so having met Vladimir Putin, for example, close up, one-on-one, it was pretty clear to me you're not going to change his ambition with a gimmicky red reset button. So let me tell you what I'm going to do as Commander-in-Chief. Number one, we need the strongest military on the face of the planet. Everybody has to know it. That means we have to care for those who have served us. The Veterans Administration needs top-to-bottom reform. And remember that bill where 400 senior executives could get fired? Well, let's fire them, please. And maybe we ought to apply that rule all throughout Washington, D.C. I would make 2 phone calls on day 1 from the Oval Office. The first call would be to my good friend Bibi Netanyahu. And I would tell Bibi that the United States of America will always stand with the state of Israel. My second phone call would be to the Supreme Leader of Iran. Actually, he might not take my phone call, but he will get the message. And the message is this: New Deal. Until you open every military facility, every nuclear facility to, for real, anytime, anywhere inspections, we, the United States of America, will make it as difficult as possible for you to move money around the global financial system. We can do that. We don't need anyone's permission or collaboration to do it. And those 2 phone calls are an instant signal to every ally we have and every adversary we have. The United States of America is back in the leadership business. I wouldn't talk to Putin. We've talked to him way too much. But what I would do is immediately start rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. I would start rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland. I would conduct regular military exercises in the Baltic states, move some more troops into Germany, and Vladimir Putin would get the message. And I would hold a Camp David summit immediately with our Arab allies who are fighting ISIS on the ground as we speak. And they have asked us for some very specific things to help them in this fight, and they know it is their fight. King Abdullah of Jordan, a man I've known for a long time, has been asking us for bombs and materiel for the last year and a half. We haven't provided it. He's now going to China. I will provide it. The Egyptians have asked us to share intelligence. I will. The Kurds have asked us to arm them for 3 years. We haven't. I will. Every single wound we have is self-inflicted, and the world is a dangerous place when we are not leading. I will lead. The President of the United States needs to understand bureaucracies because the federal government has become one giant, bloated, corrupt, inept bureaucracy. How long have we been talking about tax reform? Forever, but we have a 73,000-page tax code. How long have we been talking about reducing the size of government? How long have we been talking about debts and deficits? And yet every agency gets bigger, debts keep climbing, the tax code never gets simplified. So I am going to count on you. And what do I mean by that? Bureaucracies respond, Congress responds, politicians respond to pressure. Ours was intended to be a citizen government. So remember, I told you this, ladies and gentlemen. I will go into the Oval Office every Saturday morning for the weekly radio address, and I'm going to say to you, fellow citizens, please take out your smartphones. I'd like to ask you a couple questions. Do you think we should know where your money is being spent so we can invest more of it in the right things and stop spending it in the wrong places? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Do you think we ought to be able to hold federal government employees accountable so those that watch pornography all day long and earn the same pay, pension, and benefits as somebody trying to do a good job, there's some consequence? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Do you think a 73,000-page tax code is kind of ridiculous and we ought to actually get on with it now? We have binders full of great ideas and conservative think tanks about how to reform the tax code, and somehow we don't ever get around to it. But you will press 1 for yes. It is now. It is time. This was intended to be a citizen government. Citizens have to be engaged in the process of their government, and technology gives us that opportunity. So our president, our commander-in-chief, has to understand how the economy works, how the world works, and who's in it. She has to understand, oh my goodness, let's get that back up right away. She has to understand bureaucracies, how to cut them down to size and hold them accountable. She must understand technology because it's a tool that can re-engage citizens in the process of their government, but it is a weapon as well that is being used against us by our enemies. And most importantly of all, we need a president who understands leadership, what it is. A leader's job is to challenge the status quo. And now we need a leader in the Oval Office who, together with the citizens of this great nation, will unlock the potential of this nation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with how I see our nation. Want me to hang on to this here? All right, you got it. All right. I want to leave you with how I see our nation, what we must be, what we can be, what we will be with a President Fiorina in the White House. And to do that, I want to have you conjure up in your minds two of the most powerful symbols of our nation's democracy, Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Picture in your minds Lady Liberty. She stands tall and strong, which is what America must always be. She is clear-eyed and resolute. She doesn't shield her eyes from the realities of the world, but she faces outward into the world, which is the way our nation must always face, because a weary world is eager for us to accept the mantle of leadership. And she holds her torch high because she knows she is a beacon of hope in a very troubled world. And Lady Justice holds a sword by her side because she is a fighter. She is a warrior for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale. And with that scale, she says to us, all of us are equal in the eyes of God. And so all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law and government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. And I believe that she is saying to us that it must be true. It can be true. It will be true with your help and support. That in this nation, in this, the 21st century, it really doesn't matter who you are, or what you look like, or how you start, or what your circumstances. Here in this nation, every American's life must be filled with the possibilities that come from their God-given gifts, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.